the fourth sacred school. Wow. Wow, you know, that just out of the blue sounds pretty amazing. What is that? Well, we were in quite an experience and conversation this morning here at Gatehouse in our service. And what I'd like to briefly just share is that as we are awakening in our journey, returning home to who we are and where we belong in ourselves, in the world, in the cosmos, it's easy to recognize that there are at least 7 dimensions to our makeup. And each of those dimensions, physical, mental, our emotional body, and then this fourth level, which sits right plumb in the middle of those 3 I've just mentioned, and then 3 above, which ostensibly are invisible, invisible realms of the radiation of love, of truth, of life. At each of these 7 levels of ourselves, the way we are created, there is being. Now, if I say physical action, being in the world, succeeding, achieving, drumming, being masterful at what we do, learning a new skill, the emphasis usually is on achieving or action. But at each of these levels and dimensions, there is the presence of being at that level. So imagine the first sacred school, which historically happened some thousands of years back before the coming of Jesus the Christ, at the time of Moses, initiated by Abraham. There was something focusing for humanity in a return journey to the promised land, it was called, that had to utilize the levels of consciousness available at that time to the Great Spirit of this journey. And it called to the being of that grouping of people that wandered and walked through the desert and were freed from slavery, to harmonize with a leadership that could provide an exemplification of direction and knowledge and knowing that level of experience would understand. In other words, do what I tell you to do. But it had to have a quality of beingness for that to be unifying. And then later on, the second sacred school brought an opportunity for something to come into a unified experience of understanding at a mental level. Understanding something through parable, through speaking, you could say, to the mind directly, like a Zen koan, and saying, can you intuit? Can you receive this teaching? But it was about the presence of being. I have come to fulfill the law that was given at the first level of the sacred schools. And if you go to the third level that was initiated by Yoronda for this ministry, Emissaries of Divine Light, it was recognized, he recognized, that we couldn't go back to the first and the second beginning points. We had to start where the cycle is right now. And that is to tune in and find our source connection with who we are inside, the spirit of who we are, and to focus our heart and our mind and our body and all that we have in our awareness on tapping in to the very source nature of our spiritual nature. And so the third sacred school focused on the spiritual expression plane of being. What about the being of the heart, the fourth sacred school? It was said by the same one when he was here in the second sacred school, let your heart not be troubled. Could we, as a body of awakening people, say to our world together, let not your heart be troubled? Could we find in ourselves that place of profound peace of assurance, of attunement, where the intelligence of the heart, the wonderful skills of the heart could be employed to integrate all that is coming to the heart from above, from the higher frequencies of universal energy, of cosmic energies. We are beings. We are born out of heaven and come to restore the oneness, the flow of heaven and earth together. And right in the middle is this fourth sacred school place of the heart, the chambers of the heart that were promised to be opened to the windows of heaven, or as the windows of heaven.